Hello everyone, I am Dr. Parul Malhotra, Associate Professor, Jagannath University, Jaipur. In my today's video, I'll be talking about the history of development communication in India. And the topics that we will cover in this video are the history of development communication in India, Gandhian model, Mehta model, MDGs, that is Millennium Development Goals, and SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So to begin with, let us start with the history of development communication in India. The history of development communication in India can be traced to rural radio broadcasts in 1940s in different languages. Have you ever heard of a rural program on radio? If you come from a rural area, then you must have probably heard a program which is related with the rural development. And the people who present these programs, they always speak in the language or dialect that the people speak in your area, that is particularly their area, as radio is also a regional medium and it caters to more than 90% of population in India. So the programs that are made specifically for the rural areas, specifically for a particular area, addressing a particular issue of that particular area, it is usually made in that particular language or dialect. The programs are usually related about farming and related subjects. The program may comprise of interviews with experts, officials and farmers, folk songs and information about weather, market rates, availability of improved seeds and other implements or equipments that are required for farming. There would also be programs on related fields, that is, maybe the importance of education, sanitation, and the population control. During the 1950s, the government started huge developmental programs throughout the country. And that happened over radio only because radio was the only medium that was available in those times. In fact, newspapers were also available and they also covered the issues related to the 5-year plans and the other developmental projects that were initiated at that particular time by the government of India. In fact, when Doordarshan started on 15 September 1959, it was concentrating only on programs on agriculture. Unlike today's television that we see, which is very vibrant, colorful, and dynamic, but when Doordarshan started in 1959, it was only a half an hour news broadcast, and there were programs only that were related to agriculture. There was actually no entertainment value in Doordarshan programs in its earlier days. Many of you might have seen or might have heard about Krishi Darshan program on Doordarshan. It is a program which is related to the farming practices in India. Later in 1975, when India used satellites for telecasting television programs in what is known as satellite instructional television experiment. The programs on education and development were made available to 2,400 villages in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and Rajasthan. As far as the print media is concerned, after independence, when the 5-year plans were initiated by the government for planned development, it was the newspapers which gave great importance to the development themes. They wrote on various government development schemes and programs and how the people could make use of them. If the print media have contributed to development communication, the electronic media, radio and television, especially All India Radio and Doordarshan, have spread messages on development as the main part of their broadcasts. However, amongst all the media that are used for development communication, traditional media are the closest to people who need messages of development, like the farmers and workers. Such forms of media are participatory and effective. You may have seen construction workers cooking their meal of dal and rice over open fires in front of their tents set up temporarily on the roadsides. They need to be educated about the values of balanced nutrition, cleanliness, hygiene, and water sanitation. But this is only possible through traditional media. Many traditional mediums have been used in India, like before independence, even. If, Jatra, a dance form of Odisha, uh, it was very commonly used for spreading the messages of freedom struggle. Then we have many states performing puppet shows and other song and dance form folklore just to spread the messages of development communication. So the history reveals that along with traditional media, print media, All India Radio and Doordarshan have been effectively used for spreading the messages of development communication. But have you ever wondered how these messages on such issues are being communicated? In various parts of India, groups of volunteers use street theatre as a medium for development communication. This is done through humorous skits and plays, through which the importance of literacy, hygiene, etc. are enacted. The content for the skits is drawn from the audience's life. For example, they are told about balanced nutrition. This means supplementing their staple diet of dal and rice with green leafy vegetable known to cure night blindness, an ailment common among construction workers. Similarly, female construction workers and their children are taught how to read and write. I remember as a child when I was studying in school, my school used to host classes for the adult education, that is, for the laborers and their families. So when our school used to get over at around 2:30, so I used to see that this middle age people used to come in the school and they used to study, and even on the Sundays our school used to had workshops for them related to the education, and once they completed whatever was their tenure for that particular education, they were given goodies also, and like so that they can earn their livelihood also. So I remember it's long back, that's around 15, more than 20 years back. I remember that such things happened in my school. And this is how the traditional medium is being used in the society, educating the masses, educating the poor people, or the, you can say, the underprivileged people about the importance of education or importance of the balanced nutrition. However, you must also understand that development communication using various media is only possible with the active involvement of the following people. The first is the development agencies like departments of agriculture, organizing different activities time to time for the rural people or the underprivileged people, or maybe certain talk shows and chat shows that can be on aired on Doordarshan and broadcasted on All India Radio. Then there can be many voluntary organizations, that is the societal organization, plus the non-government organization and the concerned citizens, as I just mentioned. That's my school or any particular college or any corporate group doing such activities for the welfare or the betterment of the society. Whenever we speak about development, the contribution of voluntary groups, concerned citizens, and non government organizations cannot be ignored. Actually, these groups help the government in implementing development programs. Of course, the government, both central and state, have various departments to reach out to people on various issues. The NGOs undertake studies, conduct research, and develop appropriate messages for spreading awareness on various issues pertaining to development. I hope you are clear with the concept of the history of development communication and how these programs are being conducted. Let us learn two initial models, Gandhian model and the Mehta model. Gandhian model was the first model that was used when the development communication was initiated in India. Gandhian model of development is a micro-level approach. He laid emphasis on the village economy. The model proposed creating powerful village communities, developing self-reliant village republics, and encouraging the development of rural industry. Mahatma Gandhi always believed that the heart of India lies in villages, and if India wants to grow into a superpower, or if India wants to develop, the villages need to be developed. Only then the actual development can occur. As we know already that more than 60% of Indian population lives in villages, and our country is an agrarian economy. So thus it becomes important and imperative for us to develop the villages or the rural areas. So Mahatma Gandhi always focused on the development of villages. He believed that creating the powerful village communities meant creating the village Panchayati Raj system, breaking the social system like Varna system, and empowering people at the grassroots level. Before Panchayati Raj system was initiated, we followed a Varna system in villages where people were divided into different varnas as per their occupation. But this idea need to be changed actually with the independence. And Gandhiji always wanted that there should be a flow of democracy till the grassroots level, and it should not be limited only to the cities. And the villages should become self-reliant village republics so that there can be a proper economic development and self-sufficiency in terms of the political affairs. He emphasized and greatly believed in the cottage village industries. To him, it was production by masses and not for the mass consumption. I hope you understand the concept of cottage industry, the industries that are set up in the home itself using minimal investment and the equipments, and that can be used uh, for the masses, and so that villagers can earn their livelihood. Production by masses meant a large number of people being engaged in producing goods to meet their needs. According to Gandhi, this country has enough to satisfy the needs of the people, not their greed. He said greed, not need, is the motivating factor for corruption. Identification and fulfillment of village needs, going for khadi, and using the artisans are highlighted in the development of rural industry. Gandhi vouched for simple economics. For him, commerce was not among countries but between villages. He propagated cooperative movements, which he felt was the beginning of people's participation towards the betterment of villages. The Gandhian philosophy sums up thus simple life and limited wants. Now let's come to the next model, that is the Mehta model. The Community Development Program of 1952 introduced a new unit of development administration, namely the block, which comprised about 100 villages. The block was administered by the state government functionaries who were expected to enlist the people's participation. That is, the blocks were formed into the villages. Around 100 villages formed one block, and this block was run by the state government, and they were expected to get the people's participation through villages. So it means 100 villages means one block, and they were run by the state government. However, the program began showing signs of being unable to meet the expectations, and a probe was ordered. The result was the appointment of a team called Balwant Rai Mehta Committee by the Government of India in January 16, 1957 to examine the working of the Community Development Program and the National Extension Service to suggest measures for their better working. Balwant Rai G. Mehta was appointed as its chairman. So this community development program was initiated before the Mehta model. It was not so successful. It was becoming difficult for the state government to run these blocks and villages. So a committee was formed, and the chairman of this committee was Balwant Rai Mehta. Now that is why the suggestions that were given by him and by that committee are called as the Mehta model. So the committee was asked to suggest measures to correct the snags in the implementation of development administration of the block levels. As a way out of that community development program, the committee recommended the formation of a hierarchical three-tier system of local government to be called Panchayati Raj. Panchayati Raj means rule by the local councils. So the three-tier system works like this. At the apex level, at the lowest level, we have Gram Panchayat, that is the village Panchayat, then a Panchayat Samiti intermediate level, and Zilla Parishad is the highest in the village, that is a district level. So like we have central governments, state governments, then in between we have the after state government we have the local administration, that is in cities we have councils, like we have elections for prime minister, that is being the central government, then we have the elections for chief minister, that forms the state government, then we have election for the local municipal authorities, that are we elect the councillors. Then we come at the village level. So we have a Zilla Parishad. Below Zilla Parishad, there is a Panchayat Samiti, that is at the block level, intermediate level, that we call as the blocks. And then we have the village level. At the village level, we have the Gram Panchayat, and this system is still being followed. So Balwant Rai Mehta Committee emphasized the decentralization of democratic institutions. Its major recommendations were to shift decision-making center closer to the people, to encourage their participation, and to put the bureaucracy under local popular control. The states were to accept these recommendations and develop adequate powers to popularly elected Panchayati Raj bodies, making them responsible for the development activities within their jurisdiction. So now what happens is, if there is any problem in the villages, it is being reported to the Gram Panchayat, then the decisions are being taken at their level, and if they are not able to do so, then they are being transferred to the Panchayat Samitis at the block level, or maybe to the Zilla Parishad. So this is the hierarchy that is being followed, and so that effective development can be done, the solutions can be sought for the programs, and people from all the levels of the region can actually participate in the decision making process, right? So now let us talk about the broader perspective, that is the Millennium Development Goals. The United Nations Millennium Development Goals are the 8 goals that United Nations member states have agreed to try to achieve by the year 2015. The United Nations Millennium Declaration, signed in September 2000, commits world leaders to combat poverty, hunger, disease, illiteracy, environmental degradation, and discrimination against women. The MDGs are derived from this declaration. Each Millennium Development Goal has targets set for 2015 and indicators to monitor progress from 1990 levels. Several of these relate directly to health. The Millennium Development Goals have been superseded by the Sustainable Development Goals that we will study later in this video. First, we will talk about the Millennium Development Goals. The United Nations Millennium Development Goals (MDGs) are the 8 goals set by 189 UN member states in September 2000. All of them agreed to be achieved by the year 2015. The Millennium Declaration was signed at the September Global Summit held at the United Nations headquarters in New York. and the 149 international leaders in attendance committed to combat the disease, hunger, poverty, illiteracy, discrimination against women, and environmental degradation. The MDGs were derived from this declaration, and specific indicators and targets were attached to them. Now let us look what are these 8 goals. The following are the 8 Millennium Development Goals. First, to eliminate extreme poverty and hunger. Second, to achieve global primary education. Third, to empower women and promote gender equality. Fourth, to reduce child mortality. Fifth, to promote maternal health. Sixth, to fight malaria, HIV, AIDS, and other diseases. Seventh, to promote environmental sustainability. And last is to develop a universal partnership for development. The implementation of these 8 chapters of the Millennium Declaration was agreed to begin in 1st January 2001, and the United Nations agreed to be holding such summits every 5 years to assess its progress towards achieving the MDGs. The first follow-up to the Millennium Summit was held in 2005 at the 2005 World Summit. Since 2001, the United Nations has given a lot of priority to the implementations of these MDGs, and though most of the targets had not been achieved by 2015, a substantial positive progress has been recorded over the 15 years. So when we reach the year 2015, these Millennium Development Goals actually became obsolete, and it was felt that there is a need for much broader vision and much better goals, and the targets that had been set, they were not very extensively achieved but substantially achieved. So a new vision was set with a broader perspective, with the broader goals termed as Sustainable Development Goals. The full form of SDG is Sustainable Development Goals. These SDGs have been put in place in the hopes of achieving a future that is accessible and sustainable for everyone. There are a total of 17 SDGs set up by United Nations. Sustainable Development Goals were defined by the Brundtland Commission's report, Our Common Future, as the development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It is the most acknowledged definition of the concept, that is, a development which needs of the present. When we talk about the sustainable development goal, we talk about that we need to develop our present but not at the cost of future generation. We should not compromise the ability of the future generations to meet their need for making our future better. The sustainable development calls for concentrated efforts towards building an inclusive, resilient, and wise future for the planet and its people. The United Nations General Assembly established this set of 17 interlinked goals to be achieved globally in 2012. There are a total of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These are: first, ending poverty everywhere in all its forms. Second, ending world hunger by achieving food security, improving nutrition, and promoting sustainable agriculture. Third, ensuring healthy lives and well-being for everyone at all stages. Fourth, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting opportunities for lifelong learning. Fifth, achieving gender equality and empowering women at all stages of life. Sixth, ensuring water availability, sustainable management, and adequate sanitation for all. Seventh, ensuring access to affordable, sustainable, reliable, and modern energy for all. Eighth, promoting economic growth that is sustainable and inclusive with an assurance of productive employment and decent work for all. Ninth, building resilient infrastructure, promoting sustainable and inclusive industrialization that fosters innovation. 10th, reducing inequalities within and among countries. 11th, making human settlements and cities inclusive, safe, and sustainable, ensuring a sustainable pattern of consumption and production. 13th, taking quick actions to combat climate change. 14th, conserving the oceans, seas, and marine resources and using them mindfully. 15th, protecting, promoting, and restoring the sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, along with managing forests sustainably, combating desertification, halting biodiversity loss, and reversing land degradation. 16th, promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, providing access to justice for everyone, and building effective, accountable, inclusive institutions at all levels. 17th, strengthening the implementation and revitalization of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. So, these are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, let us understand the core elements of sustainable development. There are three core elements of sustainable development. These are economic growth, social inclusion, and the environmental protection. That is, these 17 goals have the broader categories of economic, social, and environment protection. If you look at these goals, you can very clearly divide them under these three headers: economic growth, social inclusion, and the environmental protection. These elements have been discussed briefly below. Economic growth. This element envisages a sustainable pattern of economic growth that helps to achieve sustainable livelihood and harmonious living with technology that is important and appropriate. It focuses on economic growth that generates wealth for all without impacting the environment negatively. Equal distribution of economic resources for well-rounded growth of all, eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions. So, whatever the goals are related with these 3 points are falling under the category of economic growth. Now, let us come at the environmental sustainability. This element envisages the mindful and sustainable use of the natural resources at our dispense, prevention of mindless and inexhaustible use of natural resources, and ensuring their protection and rational use. Several aspects of environmental conservation to be followed through. Steps like investing in renewable energy, judicious use of water, supporting sustainable mobility, innovative and sustainable construction and architecture, etc., all contribute to achieve environment sustainability. Social sustainability. This element envisages a social sphere where this is equality and equity for all in all aspects of life. Social sustainability can foster a sense of gender equality that shall guarantee the development of people, communities, and cultures to help achieve a better and reasonable quality of life, healthcare, and education across the globe. Sustainable Development Goals in India. Let us see how India has followed and inculcated these Sustainable Development Goals in in its region. India is a United Nations member and is involved in the SDG initiative kick-started by United Nations General Assembly. The Niti Aayog, prior to that it was Planning Commission, released the baseline report of the Sustainable Development Goals Indian Index, which studies the progress made by the country comprehensively. Below is the track record of India in the implementation of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, popularly known as Manrega, was launched in the country to provide meaningful employment to unskilled laborers and simultaneously improve their standard of living. National Food Security Act was implemented for the provision of food grains to all at a subsidized rate. The flagship program Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, undertaken by the Government of India, was launched with the objective of making India open defecation free. So these are the certain examples that we have seen in the recent years that follow the footsteps of sustainable development goals. Further few examples are renewable energy generation targets have been decided by 175 GW. This is to be achieved by 2022 by using renewable energy sources like solar energy, wind energy, and others to reduce the dependence on non-renewable sources like fossil fuels. Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation Amrut and Heritage City Development and Augmentation Yojana Hriday schemes were launched to improve the country's infrastructural aspects. After having signed the Paris Agreement, India has expressed its strong intent to fight against the climate change. Now let us understand certain global issues that are related to sustainable development. I hope you are clear with these examples that we just talked about in the Indian context. Now let us look at certain problems which are or issues related to sustainable development at the global level. There is a pattern of inequitable growth in the national economies, which we popularly call as North and South divide. Technological progress has come at the cost of loss of biodiversity. The mindless use of natural resources has resulted in a severe impact on the biodiversity of the planet. Despite all the efforts being made over the span of 20 years, the loss of the world's biodiversity continues. The questions and problems of climate change is as real and terrible as it can get. It is a global problem and hence requires global solutions and global actions. Developing countries face particular challenges that should be addressed. Climate change and sustainable development are two mutually linked forces. The careful and rational tackling of climate change shall promote sustainable development, and encouraging sustainable development shall reverse the climate change. Then global initiatives in the Sustainable Development Goals. The Stockholm Conference in 1972 was the first step towards making environmental concern a global concern. This conference led to the Stockholm Declaration, which contained an action plan and principles. This plan contained some recommendations for an environmental policy. Though this conference came much earlier than the Sustainable Development Goals, but we can consider them as one of the prior or the pioneer steps towards sustainable development. Then United Nations Environmental Programme UNEP was set up in 1972 that served as a catalyst for the development and coordination of an environmental focus on the programs of other similar organizations. So we can say that these actually paved the way for the sustainable development concerns at the global level. Then, and again, remarkable step which actually made people think about sustainable development thing, that is the Earth Summit that happened in 1992, that turned out to be a direct consequence of the Brundtland Commission's report. This summit was held in Rio de Janeiro. This culminated in the following conferences: the Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Statement on Forest Principles, the Rio Declaration, and Agenda 21. Actually, uh, when the development was happening, modernization and industrialization was happening at a very fast pace, people actually forgot about the environment and the dangers it could have on the lives of the people, that the depletion of the ozone layer or the increased cases of the loss of the biological diversity. So, slowly and steadily, people started talking about environmental protection, or the conventions on the climate change started happening. And then this shifted the focus from modernization, industrialization, and globalization to the environmental concern. It was this time that United Nations adopted Millennium Development Goals, and later on they were superseded by the Sustainable Development Goals. But it is not that only then we started thinking about it. There were many summits and conferences and were already happening in the world about sustainable development, which actually sensitized people about conserving the environment for the future generations. Then there was a Kyoto Protocol in 1997, which extended the UNFCCC of 1992 into an international treaty that promised commitment from the state parties towards the reduction of the greenhouse emissions and the human-made CO2 emission. This green gases emission and the human-made CO2 emissions were nothing but the byproduct of the industrialization. Rio plus 10, 202 was a meeting that was convened to discuss organizations practicing sustainable development to mark the 10-year anniversary of the first Earth Summit that took place in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. This gave way to the World Summit on Sustainable Development Goal, which was held in Johannesburg. Ramsar Convention, also called Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, especially as waterfall habitat, is an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of Ramsar sites. The convention happened in the city of Ramsar, Iran, after which it was named. The World Heritage Convention was a summit to identify and conserve the world's cultural and natural heritage sites. It concisely listed the heritage sites of universal values, be it culturally natural or both, needed to be preserved. Then conventions of international trade in endangered species of wild fauna and flora is a multilateral treaty that aims to extend protection for endangered species of plants and animals that have the threats of international trade looming over them. I hope you have well understood the concept of history of development communication in India, that how various mass media adopted slow development communication and how they propagated the plans and projects of government of India. Then later we talked about the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, and why Sustainable Development Goals are actually needed, and what is the need of sustainable development programs in the country and worldwide. Thank you so much for watching this video.